What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and this is The Flash, Season 7, Episode 7, Growing Pains. So overall, this one's fine. The stuff between Barry and the Speed Force, I think, is pretty well handled, mainly because I feel like they're tackling it probably how it should be. Because, you kind of get Barry's point of view on it. I mean, he looks at this woman who looks exactly like his mom, but it's not his mom. It would be difficult for him to adjust. I will say the one thing that did bug me a little bit, I guess, well, first, two things that bug me. First of all, the fact that Barry and Iris and the Speed Force, none of them really noticed the fact that the glitching happened because of the Speed Force being around. I don't know. You would think that somebody would have picked up on that a bit sooner and gone, maybe there's something we need to explore a bit more here. But honestly, they never really explored it until, I guess, at the end. And that's where the second problem comes in. Is he no longer glitching because he's no longer at odds with the Speed Force anymore? He's not trying to push her away? Is that what caused him to stop glitching, or was it something else that, like, her nearly fully healed, is that what caused it? I don't know. We never really got any answers on that, and I don't know if we're going to get answers on that, or if we're just supposed to assume it's because they're working together now and things are better. That's why he's okay now. It was just a little too vague for me. But I don't know. We'll see what happens next with that. The stuff with Killer Frost is just sort of blech. Like, I don't know. It could be more interesting if, I guess, if this had been done a bit sooner after Killer Frost's turn, but because she's been doing this stuff for so long, this feels more like an afterthought. Like they needed some other story going on at the same time as our main one so we could stretch things out a little bit. And so they decided to take a little break from the forces and all of that to focus on, oh yeah, well, okay, let's have somebody actually try to hold Killer Frost accountable for her past actions. And I don't know, it comes across as very forced to me, especially having this one agent who's just so determined to arrest Killer Frost that one ice meta attack all of a sudden provokes her to go like, it's her, it's got to be her, it's definitely her, arrest her now. I mean, I don't know. Are we just forgetting how everything works? You have to investigate, you have to get clues, you have to find evidence to prove. And like Joe said, it felt like somebody was more trying to frame her. Like there were fingerprints there from Caitlin, but like Barry said, the snow particles or the flakes or whatever, it didn't match what. I don't know. It feels very much like they wanted this woman to be more of an antagonistical character and didn't really give a whole lot of depth to her character outside of that. It was really weird, the scenes with the Speed Force, like, oh, I like her. Like, what's going on with that? Like, is she interested in this woman, or I don't know what they're implying with those scenes. Like she shows up to Barry, she's like, she's fond of you, I can tell. What is going on with that? So I don't know. It just seemed like an odd couple scenes with them. Plus the bartender guy. I mean, what a stupid side story. I mean, of course he's gonna be the bad guy because he's the one other person that you introduced who also happens to be good at science. Okay. And all the stupid scenes with, Frost seeing him for the first time and just, oh. And then he takes his shirt off in that goofy, over the top, like, sexy, show off my pecs way that, like, Jacob does in Twilight or whatever. Whichever one he gets pecs. I don't even remember because I watched them and I hate myself that I watched them. But that scene, it did crack me up when Jacob did it because it was so over the top and goofy, like, yeah. This guy, when he did it because of how they showed it, like slowed it down and over dramatized it, it made it so ridiculous to where it wasn't even funny anymore. It was just stupid. So yeah, all of those scenes with him, I mean, he was just such a throwaway character and so pointless outside of he's obviously the bad guy. So yeah, just frustrated with that. Chester as well in this one got a little bit worse. And I think, honestly, when it's him and Cisco together and whenever he's doing more serious scenes, those are the two moments where I feel like Chester can be fun, can be a good character. It's when he's on his own and trying to do all these goofy little, guys, I got my first call. Oh, what if it's a 1090? Oh, but what if it's 1011? Oh, but what? Just shut up. He's not that funny. It's funny because Frost was like, all right, have fun out there, Peralta. Jake Peralta's so much funnier than him. Like, Andy Samberg, I think that's his name, he is so much better at showing that excitable, like, puppy dog energy in a character. He's so much better at that than this guy is. This guy comes off as, like, it reminds me a bit of Beth Alice from Batwoman. Like, he's trying to be this character so hard that I don't believe any of it. Any of those scenes where he's putting on some big goofy reaction, I'm just sitting there going, dude, stop. Like, you're not funny. I'm sorry. And I don't, again, same as with Alice, I don't know if it's the actor that can't handle it or if it's the director that's not getting the proper reaction out of him. I would have to assume it's the actor, because either Grant Gustin and Tom Cavanaugh and Candice Patton are such good actors and actresses that they can act well even without a good director, or it's the actor is just not good enough to show that in a way that makes sense and makes it believable. Because most of those scenes, they're very cringy to the point where I kind of hate whenever he is by himself, and all of his movie references as well. It feels like he's trying so hard to project that Cisco energy. Like, Cisco makes a lot of movie references, but most of his are just so well, like, I don't know, he puts them so subtly and just sort of tosses them in there. This one, it was almost like he had to make sure his joke was heard. Like, he had to sit there and really emphasize what he was saying. I'm trying to remember. Oh, what was the one? Oh, the John Wick one. Like, that's a good example, because Cisco probably would have just been like, he just went all John Wick Parabellum on him. And that would have been it. For Chester, oh, he just went all John Wick Parabellum. I'm guessing I'm back. God, that's such a good movie. Shut up! Your first line would have been enough, but then you had to just go on and try to make it even more funny. And I don't know if that's writing or if they just sort of let them add their own flair to it. But God, it's annoying. It's annoying. So yeah, please either put him with Cisco so that way they can bounce off of each other, because their little friendship and their references that they make with each other typically is fine, because they do okay together, or just don't make him this goofy character. Because again, the episode when they went back in time and he had those more dramatic, serious scenes, I thought he was fine. He looked like a good actor in those scenes. He's not looking like a good actor in this episode at all. So yeah, it's the unfortunate truth of it. But yeah, obviously the next one I've seen. It's one of those ones when I saw the episode title, I'm like, oh, okay, so Killer Frost is gonna get arrested, she's gonna go to court, so that is gonna be the next episode. So I don't know what they're gonna do with it. I would assume that it's called The People versus Killer Frost, so either there's gonna be an actual case, like trial, but it sounds like she's pleading guilty, and it's just gonna come down to whether the judge rules it one way or another. So I don't know if maybe there's going to be a bit of a trial, but it's more so trying to figure out what her punishment should be. And maybe they'll try to argue, look, all the good she's done, it outweighs the stuff she did in the past. Like, we shouldn't be defined by our past. Maybe they'll try to argue that. And then, of course, what's-her-face, Kramer, will be all like, no, she needs to pay for what she's done. I really hope they at least give her a reason. Like, maybe Killer Frost did something that hurt somebody she's very close with. Maybe they'll at least give us that, but at the moment it feels more so she's just like, she's not being punished for what she did in the past, and I don't like it. And again, that's very one note for a character. So, anyways, on to the next episode. I'll see you there. And now, episode 8, The People versus Killer Frost. This episode just felt like it kind of dragged on. And I guess a lot of that comes down to I kind of got the gist of where a lot of it was going to go early on. And most of the time, if you've seen any episode like this where somebody who is a hero or a vigilante or a villain turned hero is on trial for something, most of the time it tends to go something like this. Now, granted, always the ending can be a little different. Sometimes it's sweet, sometimes it's bittersweet, sometimes it's happy. Occasionally it's sad, but that's just a setup for the next episode most of the time. So in this case, they went with the bittersweet route where they had her save all these metahumans by making sure the precedent was not set about the cure. But of course, that means she has to go to prison for the rest of her life without parole. So it is one of those like, okay, well, that's sad, but obviously happy that she saved all those people. And honestly, I do kind of wonder if they did it just because they were like, you know what, Danielle Panabaker, I'm sure you're a little tired having to constantly put on the. I don't know if she wears a wig or if they just. I'm sure she wears a wig. Now that I think about it, they wouldn't dye her hair back and forth. That wouldn't make any sense. Come on, Mason. But having to do like the wig on, the makeup, all of that stuff, I bet at some point they're just like, you know what? It's too difficult to have two Caitlins on there, and we don't want to put them back together and then have her just changing back and forth between these two characters. So let's just have her go to prison, but we'll have it be a happy moment because again, she saves people while doing it, so it's more of a sacrifice than anything. But yeah, so because of that, a lot of these scenes felt like they dragged on. Them trying to go basically stop the cure by doing whatever they did, hacking in and whatever that. I don't even remember what that little device that they put on the door was supposed to do now. But all of that, I'm thinking, okay, so let me guess, that's going to come back to bite them, right? Like somehow things are going to go wrong and then they're going to need, or maybe they think they do need the cure, but they have more outside of that room. And of course it ends up backfiring. So I don't know. It just, again, felt like it dragged on a little bit. It felt like a lot of these scenes were just, I kind of know where they're going, so can we just get there, please? And ultimately, at the end of it, Kramer is still not that interesting of a character. We do finally get a reason, and it's weak. Oh no, there's a metahuman that you trusted these soldiers to follow, and then the metahuman lied and got them killed. Oh no. So now every single metahuman is bad? And on top of that, it's funny because she's like, no, metahumans that just pretend to be heroes. Okay, so are you including the Flash in there? Because he is a hero. Or do you, because he was never a criminal before this, do you just look at him and say, no, that's actually a hero? Like, where do you draw the line? That's the thing. Her motivations are so weak that you could poke so many holes in how she feels and what she's trying to do. And then the worst of it is at the very end, whenever she's talking to Joe, and again, I feel the same way that I do about Eva. They were trying to make Eva sympathetic at the end of her story, but they failed hard. Here again, it's like they're trying to make her sympathetic. They gave her a reason why she's doing this, and then at the end, she's talking to Joe, and she's like, I admire your commitment to justice. I admire that. And instead of just doing what he should have done, which would have vindicated a lot of the people probably that... I'm assuming most people felt this way about her character that I did. Like, she's a piece of shit. Honestly, Joe's response should have been something like, okay, thanks. There's the door. Bye. Or something along those... Something sarcastic thrown back in her face. But instead... Same for me. I don't remember exactly what I said, but basically something along those lines, like ditto, essentially. And all the vindication we got was Joe saying, but you need to think about which side of the line you're on. That's it? He praises her after what she just did to Frost, getting her put in jail for the rest of her life? Like, trying to force the metahuman cure? You're praising her for all of that. Like, that's... And she wasn't even likable while she was doing any of that stuff. Again, she was just so one note. So yeah, I'm hoping she's off the show. I'm hoping we don't see any more of Kramer, but I feel like, again, the way that they wrote her here at the end, I feel like we're going to see her again. She's going to come back. She's going to help the team out to atone for what she did, probably, and I'm just not looking forward to it. So, the stuff with Nora, the Speed Force, I guess, because Nora wouldn't act this way. Yeah, it just sort of comes out of nowhere. Don't know why. Because as soon as we meet Alexa and we find out that maybe she's Fuerza, all of a sudden, like, just the turn in this episode. We've been dealing with Barry and the Speed Force hanging out, and it's been mostly focused on the fact that she looks like his mom, and she's trying to get to know Barry more, and that's kind of been most of the season so far. So then, out of nowhere in this episode, they're trying to figure out more about these other forces, and they're talking about the one, the Still Force, which again still feels very odd. They're talking about the Still Force and the fact that he had feelings, he felt something different. Maybe they're not all bad, and then all of a sudden Nora chimes in. She's like, "No, these are all monsters that attacked me, Barry. You need to remember that." And all I could think was, are we setting up for a betrayal here? Like, are we setting up for her to turn against the team because they're going to try to help these people? Is that where we're going with this? Because that feels very, very weak if that's what they're trying to set up here. Because it felt pointless for her to react that way. Unless they wanted there to be some surprise thing. Because, I don't know. Even whenever they brought her in, like they brought Alexa in and there's the Speed Force, she's like, "Oh, it's okay. I'm sure if something goes wrong, the Flash will be there." Like, you could tell it was that false, "Oh, okay, so she sees their point now, right? Like, everything's good." Just so at the end of it, you could flip that on its head again and be like, "Nope, actually, this whole time she still thinks these people are monsters." And I don't know, it feels like a weak reasoning, because we have seen that when they turn into these monsters, assuming that all three of the other forces are like this, like they're normal humans, and then whenever something brings that other side, the force, out of them, that's when they turn into these villains, almost. Like, Fuerza obviously is just She-Hulk ripped off, so it's whenever she gets angry, that's whenever she hulks out and goes crazy. Sage, I couldn't really tell what was going on with him, honestly. I mean, it seemed like he was just sort of sadistic little bastard who enjoyed giving people their worst fears and trying to, cause anarchy in the system. And then Still Force guy seemed like he was just kind of living in his moment that he had in high school, and that's what he wanted to do. And whenever somebody tried to take that away from him, that's when he turned into a villain. I don't know. This is the first one that we've seen that's made me think, okay, so it's a human who is given these abilities and then they black out and become the Force. Whatever force they're tied to. But this is the first time we're seeing this. We've not been hinted at that at all with the other two. So this feels like a sort of out of nowhere thing. So that way Barry and Iris can sort of be like, "Oh, well, maybe we don't need to just attack them. Maybe there's something else going on here. Maybe these people are innocent." Just then, so the Speed Force can step in and say, "No, these are monsters. They attacked me. They tried to eat me alive. We need to kill them." And again, it feels forced. It feels like a weak reasoning for the Speed Force to turn on them. I don't know. I don't really understand what they're doing here with all of this writing. It feels like it's very, I don't know. It's kind of, I guess, try hard is the best word I can come up with. It feels like it's trying too hard to be really confusing and plot twisty, almost like an M. Night Shyamalan movie. You know how most of the time his twists are thrown in there, you probably won't be able to guess what the plot twist is because he doesn't want you to, because he doesn't give you enough hints to, so that way whenever all of a sudden there's a plot twist, he can be like, "Oh, got you." That's what this feels like. It feels like they wanted to make it so confusing and nonsensical and not give us any clues about what's going on here, so that when all of a sudden there's this plot twist about halfway through the season, they could be like, "Aha! Nah, we got you. You weren't expecting the Speed Force to turn on them, were you?" Well, no, because this is the first episode where you've even hinted that that's a possibility. So, I don't know. It's a little frustrating. I don't want there to be like what we've seen before, where we see who the villain is first and then a few episodes later then the team figures out. I don't want that, but I still feel like in the past they've done a better job of setting up these betrayals, these sudden plot twist villains out of nowhere. They've done a better job of setting this up before, where it made sense. It felt like it fit within the story. It felt like whenever it happened, I had some answers about why they might be betraying the team or why they might be doing this. Now it feels like I have no answers. I have no idea outside of she thinks that they're monsters, and she thinks Barry and Iris are going to try to help them. And I don't really understand, like, how that is enough for her to completely turn on them. Like, it doesn't feel strong enough for me. So, that's my thoughts on it. I think that's about all for this episode. So, on to the final of these three. I'll see you there. And now, episode 9, Timeless. Stuff's just happening at this point, right? Right? That's what it feels like. It feels like the writing team is just like, whatever. Let's just have Barry try to run back in time and change the past. But nobody's going to agree. Barry shouldn't even want to do that, because that would be stupid, because then it would change time and it would create, what we've fought so hard to stop before with Crisis and all that. Why would he do that? Oh, it's fine. Let's just have Timeless Wells be able to somehow rewrite time to make it to where it still keeps the timeline intact, because that's somehow possible now? Okay, sure. Whatever. And then Iris can somehow, something inside of her is tracking these things because somehow Barry and her birthed them, so they're kind of their kids, which is also weird when you think about it, because that means Barry and Iris created his mom. There's a weird complex for you to study. Anyways, but yeah, so now all of a sudden there's something inside of her. She can track the forces, and then they track down Psyche and tries to reason with him, but that doesn't work because, of course, it's not going to, because he seems like he's a bit of a sociopath. And I don't know, like, Barry tries to destroy the forces, but then it starts to kill the host they're in as well, but I thought that was supposed to not do that. And again, Alexa's the only one that it seems like is her own person outside of the Force. She is clearly not Fuerza. Fuerza is like this big hulking monster. Dion, though, seems like he and the Force are pretty much one and the same. Psyche, whoever he is, seems like he's human too, just with these powers now. And Nora, I mean, we know Nora doesn't exist anymore because she's dead. So how can Nora and the Speed Force be two separate entities? So it feels like everything's very inconsistent right now in the writing. And it feels like they're writing this stuff, like Alexa dies. And all of a sudden, Barry and Iris manage to wake her up because they connected, and then that somehow brings the Strength Force back to life and wakes Alexa back up somehow. That brain that you have up there, if you still have one, writing team, that's supposed to be used to construct a plot and make it all connect. You're clearly not doing that right now. And I don't know, I mean, granted, The Flash used to be one of my favorite shows on the CW, so maybe I'm looking back on it with some fondness. I don't remember the writing being this bad before. This is so just, we'll just have this happen, then we'll have this happen, and then we'll have this. Like, before, when Barry went back in time to rewrite time, it felt like there were consequences. It felt like there was stuff that made sense within the constructs of the world. Obviously, you bring it into the real world, none of it makes any sense anyway. But they built rules, and there's a certain way those rules functioned that they kept mostly consistent throughout the first few seasons. But now, all of a sudden, I don't know what the rules are anymore. They create this Speed Force. Iris somehow has some sort of remnants left inside of her. She uses that as like the organic whatever. They create the Speed Force. Somehow that creates these 4 other forces. One is the Speed Force. Somehow there's a strength, there's a time-based one, and then there's one that's more mental, fear-based. How does creating a Speed Force create these other 4 forces? And again, it seems like Alexa was possessed by a force, but Dion, he seems like he and the Force just are together, they're connected. Psyche's the same way, and then Nora was created from the past Speed Force, although now she seems evil for some reason. So I don't know, it feels like to me the writers don't really know what they want to do. They don't know what they're planning. It feels like they're just going episode by episode, and they're just sort of writing whatever comes to mind for that episode. You know what, now that we're here, I guess let's have the Speed Force be the bad guy now. And now that we're here, you know what? let's have Barry decide he wants to try to go back in time and change this. And somebody pops their head in, hey, what about Crisis? Barry wants to go back in time and change things, but there's a solution to how he can go back and change things without changing anything. Wells can do it. I'm a brilliant writer. Oh god, see I've seen a few jokes made about the whole writers, like the huge strike going on right now. I've seen a few jokes made about how writers, want to get paid a fair amount, and some people have brought up like I could use most of the CW shows and be like, you want to get paid to do this? Oh god, if I went into my job and I did my work as well as you did your work for these shows on the CW outside of Superman and Lois, I would be fired within a week. So, oh my god, yeah, it's sad. Outside of that, we did have the whole like Barry realizing that the forces are basically his kids, and Joe talking to him and being like, you need to realize that it's not about who they are, it's about who they can be. And it's funny to me because I'm like, I feel like I swear I just heard this message before, and I feel like I heard it recently. Almost like the entirety of the last episode was based on the notion that Killer Frost is no longer who she used to be. You couldn't even write that in? You couldn't have Joe say, hey, think about Frost. Look at how she used to be, but look at who she is now. The forces can be the same way. And again, we've not seen any sort of hint that these forces can be reasoned with at all. So I'm not necessarily saying I agree with Joe, but if you're going to make this point, you literally just had an episode that almost makes this point for you, and you don't even bring it up. You don't connect it to that at all. That's its own separate storyline. How stupid can you be, writers, that you couldn't connect those stories together and make that make sense? This is why Frost went through that whole storyline, is to build up to this. No. Frost was doing her own thing. We just needed a reason to write her off the show. So, moving on. And then to make things even worse, Cisco's apparently going to leave the show, because he and Camilla want to move to Central City. Because guess what that means? We're going to get a lot of Chester trying to fill that Cisco role, and he's not going to do it well. Yeah. It's funny, I went ahead and looked up the IMDb rating for all of these episodes through to the final season, because I was a little curious. I was curious to see, does it have any bright points, does it get any better, or does it stay sort of middle of the road? Because recently these last few seasons have been mostly very middle of the road, like somewhere between 5 and 7, with the occasional bump up over 7. Hardly any 8 or 9 episodes. I think All's Wells That Ends Wells, I think that one was a little bit higher, which, to be fair, again, that did have some good moments in it. But it feels like for the most part, these past couple seasons have stayed below 8.0, which is not normal for The Flash, in my opinion. So I looked. I was like, does it get any better? It does not. So because of that, I'm a little worried to see where we go from here. Because, I don't know. I hate it whenever a show that I enjoy so much takes such a hit. Like Bones. Bones is a good example. I love Bones. Bones' first few seasons, it gripped me. I was excited. I got into it. I watched all the way up until whatever episodes were airing at the time. And around season 9 or 10, it just straight downhill. And I remember doing reviews for it at the time and thinking, God, this show used to be so good. What happened? And I feel like at some point, it's just, you go too long with it, you kind of lose what you want to do with it. That's why I do think some of the best shows that are out there typically are limited. They don't go past 5 or 6 seasons, because once you get to that point, unless you have a good idea of what you want to do down the line, most of the time, it gets worse. Because you start to run out of ideas, you start to run out of good stories to make. and it becomes repetitive, it becomes boring, or it becomes stupid. And fortunately, the Flash has fallen right in there because it was not good last season, and it's not picked itself back up this season. So, a little sad, but ultimately, what can you do? It is what it is. So, with that being said, that's all for these 3 episodes. So let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What were your thoughts on these 3? Let me know. We can talk about and discuss all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Flash reviews, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.